One of Belgium's best-known classics, Het Volk, or better known to many people as Ghent, 1997. Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Liggett, and joining me in the commentary box is Paul Sherwen, who actually rode this event during his 10-year career. And this is the route the riders face. They leave the city of Ghent, where the race used to finish. Last year it went to the finish in Lokeren, where it stays this time around. We go down into the hills of Flanders, 11 little climbs down there, some of them the most famous ones at that, including the Muur de Grammont. Then it's back through Wetteren to the end of the 200 kilometres in the town of Lokeren. The busy marketplace. And as always, for any big race in Belgium, a massive crowd, and they've all come to see this man, Johan Museeuw, the first season in the rainbow jersey of world champion, and making him a very proud man indeed to race in Belgium today. Well, Museeuw has never won this race, but this man certainly has. He won it last year and had a great season. Tom Steels on the same Map 8 team as Johan Museeuw. Franco Ballerini, the winner in 1995, and yet another member of the immensely strong Map 8 team. And this is Peter van Petegem, already a win under his belt this year and showing good form. He lives very local to the race route, he knows it well. André Schmil, always a man for the classics, whatever the time of the year, but only a third place for him in this event in 1995. Rabobank's Rolf Sorensen from Denmark, a man for the classics, he's won 2 of them. And this is Fred Moncassin from the GAN team, and he had a second in this event back in 1994. Richard Virenque, not the sort of race you'd expect to see Richard riding, 3 times a winner of the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France, already a winner this year by a big margin at the opening event of the season. And so all of the riders leave the Friday marketplace, and we'll just take you out onto the course and just give you a look back onto the Muur de Grammont. It was worth watching before we join the action on the Molenberg. The field rolling away, very compact group, and just to warm their appetite for the bad roads to come, they're even starting on the cobbles here in Ghent. And so this is what happened on the Muur de Grammont. The crowd well back with this, the traditional climb. It's hill number 6 of the 11 climbs. A break is on. Jackie Duron of the Casino team, Jan Popper of the Ipso team, and Wim Omloop from the Palmans team. And they've been away a long time, Paul.
Well, they started after 30 kilometres and built up a maximum lead of 5 minutes. This very often happens in a race like Het Volk. They let the early riders take a long lead, and then they accelerate when they get into the hilly section.
And this is Richard Virenque in a small 3-man chasing group with Sebastian Medon and Kastenhuber of Germany.
Strange to see Virenque in a position like this in one of the hilly Belgian classics, but obviously he's in great form at the moment with that early season win under his belt.
And then the main field, not surprisingly, led by Wilfred Peters here in the Map 8 team colours, trying to pull this race back together, and there's plenty of time to do that with some big climbs still to come. And the white jersey of the world champion Johan Museeuw not far off the lead, his teammates all around him.
André Schmil going there through for Lotto, Joe Plancart as well, but you can see, Phil, very often there's a small group when you come to the Muur de Grammont, but in the Het Volk it comes so early in the event that nearly the whole of the peloton gets here, and you will see that there are going to be several problems in the early stages of this climb.
Well, the trouble is, of course, the back riders have to literally queue to get onto the climb, and then they start to fall off, and once one starts to fall off, then I'm afraid it's a question of walking up the hill. And you can imagine the chaos going on right now at the back of this bunch as the big peloton try to find the way up to the top of the Muur de Grammont.
Fortunately for the riders, though, it is dry today. When it's wet, it is very difficult indeed to ride this course, and you have to make sure you're in the right gear when you get to the bottom of the cobble section. This is the toughest part here coming into this corner, which is why all the cameramen are there waiting for this site, the site of a lot of riders in professional cycling having to resort to walking up the climb.
And quite frankly, it's often the quickest way too. One rider there deciding it's worth another go. So that was the chaos on the Muur de Grammont. We had 3 leaders, 3 chasers, and 1 or 2 walkers in the main field. Then the race headed out to the Molenberg, and now we've got 4 men in the lead.
Well, those 4 riders, in fact, picked up the leading group of Jackie Durand and Wim Omloop very soon after the Muur de Grammont, as well as Richard Virenque, who was safely back in the main field. And then it was, again, the Mapei team who started to put the pressure on, and Franco Ballerini, a man for these hilly classics of Belgium, was in the break once more.
And just look at the narrow road here. They made that right turn onto the Molenberg, a bit of a bumpy passage up to the top. Very narrow road this indeed. And the main field now trying to get themselves back in contention, being led here by Rabobank's Leon van Bon. And this is Johan Capio, and I think he's in a little bit of trouble here, Paul. He's losing ground.
Well, he's tried to stay in contention with that group. I think maybe TVM put a bit of pressure on there early on, because Jesper Skibby is in this leading group of riders too. And on the left-hand side of the 3 riders, the very good German sprinter Marcel Wusp.
André Schmil, the Lotto rider, he says Lotto's ambition this year is to win every race in Belgium. Well, that's a tough order. Well, let's see how he gets on in this one to start with. They're the leaders, Skibby, Wust and Ballerini. Marcel Wust, well known, of course, to riders all over the world. He rides particularly well in the Herald Sun Tour in Australia. He's ridden extremely well in the Tour du Pont. And he really is a wandering man. He used to race for the Spanish MX Honda team, and now he's got himself a new team this year, and that's why he probably wants to show his colours early on. Now you see the scrabbling for places as the riders now are being pulled out into a straight line here. Still 60 kilometres to go, just around about 38 miles to the finish, and the race is coming more or less back together. But Skibby, Wust and Ballerini, they're making their move right now.
It's a very difficult race to judge, Het Volk, because all of the difficulties, the climbs of Flanders are so far from the finish. We've just gone over the Molenberg, 60 kilometres to go. There's one final climb left, that of the Berendries, which then leaves the riders 50 kilometres of flat before they go up to the finish in Lokeren, which gives a lot of the teams the chance to organise the chase and bring the whole race back together, which is why Het Volk very often finishes in a big bunch sprint.
And very often, in fact more years than not, won by a Belgian rider. Very few foreign riders ever have won Het Volk. The first winner, by the way, was Jean Bogart back in 1945. And Tom Steels has kept the Belgian sandwich working with the victory last year. Now what's going on here? Ballerini, a little tap onto Jesper Skibby.
Bit short of breath, I think, just at the top of the climb there, pushing, in fact, these 2 riders into each other's slipstream. I think he doesn't want to contribute to this breakaway of 3 riders at the moment. He knows the main field is very close behind him, and he knows that Mapei GB have got a very strong team in the race. Men like Wilfred Peters, men like Tom Steels. It could be that the plan for Ballerini today is to keep the whole field together so that Steels can win if it comes to a sprint again. They've got one more climb to come, that of Berendries. There's 8 kilometres between these 2 climbs.
Well, there's the field. I mean, standing out now, almost as bright as the rather frosty conditions here, is that white jersey of Johan Museeuw. He said at the start it was his proudest moment coming to it in the rainbow jersey.
Well, these 3 leaders, Phil, they certainly don't seem to be opening up the gap too much. Marcel Wust on the front here, the sprinter from the German squad, who really almost finished his career when he signed for the Le Groupement team a couple of years ago, the team that abandoned cycling just before the Tour de France. That gave Marcel Wust a new chance, really, because that was when he was picked up by a Spanish team and won 2 stages in the Tour of Spain, and his career seemed to take off again.
There's the gap, 22 seconds, not a lot yet, but with Ballerini up in the breakaway, there won't be any reaction at all from Mapei, Johan Museeuw's team. Although Ballerini won't want to go too far with Marcel Wust because he knows just how good a finisher he is.
I do still feel sure, Phil, with 55 kilometres remaining in this event, that it's all going to come back together. Ballerini, for the moment, doing a little bit of work in this breakaway, but I think he's playing two cards at the moment. His own card, if this breakaway succeeds, then he's going to try and go out for a victory, but not putting too much energy into the success of this breakaway because he's thinking about Tom Steels in the group behind. Tom Steels, one of the top sprinters in the world and a man who really could walk out with the victory of the race here today if they all finish together in Lokeren.
Well, there's no passengers in the breakaway, at least at the minute. Wust, Skibby now, Ballerini, and just over 20 seconds the gap, and it really is nothing at this minute. The Berendries is nearly upon us as they race down to these residential streets here in Flanders, and the trees yet to burst into flower and bud.
Well, Wust is certainly the man here who wants this breakaway to succeed more. In fact, it looks very much as if they're starting to stretch out their lead, because the main field, you can just see from the helicopter there, not really chasing them down at the moment, fanning out across the road. In fact, one or two riders taking the opportunity, I think, to try and catch up from behind before we go in to the final climb of the race, climb number 11, the Berendries. And that gap now, Phil, does really seem to be stretching out a little bit.
Well, maybe. It's still a fair way to go once they're over the top of Berendries. And there we are, 2 kilometres of climbing, and we're nearly on it now. And then we'll know better over the top just whether they are going to consolidate. Now there's a little bit of a move on here, and it looks as though it's possibly Wust who's going away.
Well, Wust is definitely trying to push this break as far away as possible. 26 seconds, so it is going out. And Wust is, I think, not too happy with the fact that Ballerini is soft shoeing it through, as the riders say in professional terms. He's using what they call glass cranks. He doesn't push too hard on the pedals. He goes through, doesn't contribute too much to the extension of the gap. All he's worried about, I think, is staying safe to the top of Berendries and hoping that the team will come back with Tom Steels, who's certainly in this group of riders we're looking at now.
Yes, I'm not so sure that Ballerini is going as well as we think today. And Wust living on the residue of having had 12 wins last year, which is a great season for him in Spain. And now he's on the team from Andorra. Well, in fact, it's re-registered these days in France, the Festina team.
Big advantage also for Wust over these other two riders is he spent most of the winter months in Australia. He raced there in the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic, so he should have a lot of miles in his legs at the moment, which is why he's probably quite frisky compared to the other two riders who've had to go down to Spain in the early part of this year to train. Wust has been riding his bike all through the winter months. They're now on the foot of Berendries, and it's up to 30 seconds.
And it's all really due to the efforts of Marcel, who's forged the gap and he wants to keep it going.
In fact, somebody's going off the back there, Phil. It looks
Ballerini.
very much as if it's Ballerini, so that is a rather strange move.
It was just the look on his face earlier. I didn't like it because Ballerini is such a cool operator in these breakaways, but for once he looked as though he was under pressure. I don't think he's quite ready for the big classic races yet, and of course he's still got time. Milan San Remo's a couple of weeks away, but he's back into the action. It's hard to beat a man with the talent of Ballerini, that's for sure. Marcel clearly the frisky one in this breakaway. Here we are down on the ground with them now on the climb of the Berendries. Jesper Skibby, who knows this area just about as well as any Belgian. He's the rider that was involved in that contretemps with the Commissaire's car on the climb of the Old Quaremont in 1989 in the Tour of Flanders when he was knocked off. Now, is this is Joe Plankert?
Joe Plankert, the younger member of the great Plankart racing family, he's decided he's going to try and get across to those riders. Lotto, as you said earlier, want to win a lot more races in Belgium. They've brought on board a lot more foreigners. It used to be the policy of the Lotto team only to employ Belgians because this is a national Belgian lottery, but they have brought on board Demonadine Abdou-Japarov this year and Laurent Madouas for the stage races, so they're looking for some success at home, which is probably why Joe Plankart is trying to jump across this gap, but 30 seconds gap on your own is very difficult indeed.
And Joe's decided to keep a heavy gear on that climb and use all of his strength to get across if he can. He certainly opened the door. Now it's up to him. The gap is there. Again, a narrow road, this climb of the Berendries, so it's smooth for the moment at least. This is the main field being brought up by Gann. I think it's Stuart O'Grady.
Well, Joe Plancard, as a fact, has managed to get across that leading group of 4 riders, Phil. So that was a successful move there by Lotto, putting a man in the leading group of 4. And as always, whenever we seem to see this group, Franco Ballerini sitting at the back, not really contributing too much. Now, is it because it's a tactical move by him to make sure that this break doesn't get too far ahead? Or is it because he really isn't in great shape, because this is only one of the first major rendezvous of the season?
Well, he's got his hands full here, that's for sure. Skibby will try to attack, and Skibby packs quite a punch in the sprint. And Wust, of course, is a great sprinter, and the gap has gone out to 46 seconds now.
Joe Plancard here leading this group of 4 riders, 38 kilometres from the finish. And with that 46 seconds, it's looking now as if they may well have pulled off the surprise and cheated the sprinters of their day of glory, because Marcel Wust is riding a storming race, Phil. I've rarely seen him ride in a breakaway like this, as strong as this, and I feel sure it's got a lot to do with the fact that he's put in quality miles during the winter months. But Franco Ballerini happy just to sit at the back and let the other 3 do the work. And the last time check of 46 seconds, I think, may well have been a little bit optimistic, because the main field is very long and straight now, and the work being done by Mapei GB. Obviously, they're thinking of their man Tom Steels. This is Carlo Bowman's wearing number 2. There's Johan Museo, the champion of the world, and somewhere in the main group there is going to be Tom Steels, and he will be looking for the big victory, which is why Mapei now have decided enough is enough. We're going to close it down. Jean-Luc Vandenbroek in the Lotto team car coming up here to tell his riders to try and slow it down a little bit, but that's not the done thing. This is exactly where the riders are at the moment, Phil. They're just coming into the town of Wetteren, and it is very fast all the way up to the finish in Lokeren.
Well, I think we've answered our own question, Paul. Ballerini is not their man today. Otherwise, they wouldn't be riding like this. They're out to catch their own teammate here.
Bart Lazen was the man on the front there. There's Wilfred Peters, one of the strongest men here in this squad. And there is Tom Steels just going off the picture now. He's the man that they want to bring it all together for. Andre Schmeel from Lotto, he's sitting quite comfortably at the moment because he has a man in the front. And there, the white jersey on the Gann rider, one of the top Australian riders, the new wave of Australian riders, Henk Vogels.
Yes, I have a lot of time for Henk. I think he'll be an excellent rider this year.
Good French sprinter coming through here, Emmanuel Magnan, a former French national cyclocross champion. And in fact, the main field in sight of the leading group there, only 12 degrees Celsius today with a slight wind, just 10 kilometres an hour. But you can see it's all coming back together as these riders go into that headwind.
A bunch regrouping and trying to work out. This is Wetteren now. No more climbs left at all. It's a matter of get on with it, and that's why Mapei have now waited till the Berendries was over. They waited to see if that lead group surrendered, and as they didn't, they decided to go out front now and bring them back. They're slowly hauling them in. We're down to 17 seconds.
Interesting to see, though, Phil, this year, in fact, Johan Museo for the last few years has not been regarded as one of the top sprinters. When he came into the sport, he was regarded as a roadman sprinter. He won stages in the Tour de France, but since then he went and became much more of a classic rider. But this year, in the Ruta del Sol, he won 3 stages of that event in the bunch sprint. So it could be that it's going to be very difficult going down to that final sprint for Mapei to decide which man they want to lead out. But I do feel sure that they will put their money on the shoulders of Tom Steels because he is such a rapid sprinter.
And Bart Lazen, and the rider just slipping away, who's working very hard and always does work hard, is Wilfred Peters. He's taking his turn through in the line.
Basically, they've got the Belgian contingent of the Mapei GB squad here today, apart from Franco Ballerini, who is almost half a Belgian now because he really does excel on these roads, and the work there done by Mapei GB has brought it all together. There's a very happy dog there trying to get in to join the race.
Not the place to be. So the race, after all of that, and the 2 main attacks of the day have now been brought back. There was Jerome Popper and Omloop. They got caught. Now Skibby, Wust, Ballerini, and after that Joe Plancard. They've been caught. So now advantage does indeed swing back to Mapei. They've ridden well here. They've got themselves right at the front of the race with 32 kilometres to go to the finish. Carlo Bowmans, the former champion of Belgium, is setting the pace.
Well, they've really announced their colours early in the race, Phil. It's a long ride to the finish here because it's very flat. There is a slight headwind for the riders. Not a major wind as we normally get here in Belgium at the moment, but these riders, 30 kilometres to go, have now shown their cards. They have to stay at the front and control the whole of the peloton, which is very difficult to do at this stage of the game because your force is not quite there after only 1 month of racing. And coming up very shortly, these riders are going to come to a long section of cobbles, 2 kilometres long.
And there's only 2 more stretches to go of bad roads. There's no more hills. Museo just riding in the slipstream of his team, watching his domestiques at work, keeping the pace high. He himself using virtually no energy at all here, just ticking along. Haven't actually seen Tom Steele's, Paul, at the moment, but I think he's just behind Museo.
That's him there, in fact it is, just sitting on the wheel of Johan Museo. Museo, such a controlled character in this field at the moment, very happy to ride in the slipstream of his team. They're all dedicated to his or Tom Steele's victory today as they're preparing themselves now for the next section of cobbles, which is the Koningsstraat, the king of the cobble street.
King Street, yes. Carlo Bowman's always pick him out, as he has that tight crouch position, very typically a Belgian riding style.
Feel the nervousness starting now there. André Schmeel is moving up into the wheel of Johan Museo. All these riders know that the section of cobbles is about to approach, so they're moving up the outside. They're leaving Mapei GB to do all of the work at the front, but they want to be in the next few positions going into that section of cobbles.
Now a slight change at the front here, as the Mapei boys are finding a little bit of problem coming their way now, as other teams are deciding to try and break it up. Well, this was bound to happen. They weren't going to allow Mapei to carry them all the way to the finish on flat roads. And this is where the Mapei team now must watch for the little breakaways that could spoil their day. So far, they haven't made a mistake. They've worked it all out. They've got the race back together. They have the firepower on their team to win this race. The other teams know it. So it's time, I think, to try and break up this race.
Stuart O'Grady there from the GAN team. Interesting to see Stuart attacking like this, really knowing that the cobbles are coming up and hoping to try and just steal a march over the rest of the main field. 30 kilometres to go before the finish.
Well, there's the white jersey of Johan Museo sitting on the wheel of 3 of his teammates now, as they're bringing a semblance of sense back into this chase. Lotto have played a high-profile race so far. They've had Plankett up in the move. André Schmeel has also been ever present.
A flurry of attacks there caused some disorganisation in the Mapei GB squad, but once again they've brought themselves back to the front of the peloton, brought themselves back into that very strict, tight formation that we've seen over the last few kilometres and started to control the race properly. Bart Lazen there just dropping onto the wheel of Franco Ballerini. There in front of him, behind him I should say, is Johan Museo, the world champion, and sitting comfortably in an ideal position there in the wheel of Johan Museo is the top sprinter, Tom Steels. And interesting to see the rider from Aubervilliers, the French team there, is Pascal Lino, the man who wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, looking for a big comeback this year because he's really been in the doldrums for the last few years, trying to find some form to equal that he had when he rode for the great Festina squad a few years ago.
Tack down the outside now as the Rabobank start to go, making a sharp right-hand turn. Good move to make it just as the riders slow down for the bend, and there's a chance that you might get away, but Bart Lazen is alert, and Carlo Bowman's. They've seen the break go. Now they're going to have to ride it back in. Franco Ballerini now doing his little show at the front.
And you see there's no panic at all in Mapei GB. They'll let one man go clear on his own, and they'll just slowly peg him back. They'll give him 50 or 100 meters, and then they'll just slowly accelerate and bring him back into the fold. That's the idea of the teamwork that's being done at the front, not to panic, just to control yourself, keep yourself in that formation and peg back slowly and carefully any of these small breakaway groups. Art
Vierhouten, one of the Rabobank riders, and I must say, Not a man we see often on the attacks, so that's why we didn't pick him up straight away, but he's going to have a go today. Rabobank, a big new sponsor for Dutch cycling, not just for this professional team, by the way. They sponsor grassroots club cycling right through, and hopefully that way they will bring riders from the very beginning right through to be a top pro in their big team. It's a great sponsorship, and Rabobank really are turning towards the sport of cycling in a big way. Mappe working very hard to keep a control of this race now. Carlo Bowman setting the pace, Bart Lazen just behind him. And this race, having brought back the 2 breakaways of the day, have now got a real chance of handing this race across to their world champion Johan Museeuw. That's Andre Schmil in the red jersey. And remember, the race today lasting some 5 hours, a long way for these riders. It's now 25 kilometres to go to the finish, and everything going the way of the Mappe team at the moment. They've got the long breakaway possibility to come from Johan Museeuw, and if it's down to a sprint finish, well, they're still on with Tom Steels, who's sitting right in there behind the world champion. The express train for Mappe is ahead of world champion Museeuw. The TVM, the riders in the yellow jersey, are placing a lot more men near the front as well. And Lotto, these seem to be the 2 teams who are out to counter anything that Mappe do. And in fact, riding gently off the front at the minute, it looks like it's Johan Capio.
A strong rider there. He doesn't want to be on his own, I don't think, at the moment. We're still 23 kilometres to go, but he's waiting to stay in the front of this field because we're still waiting for the cobblestones to turn up, and that's the last possible chance I think anybody's going to have of getting away from this flying field at the moment.
Twice a winner, 1990, 1992, Johan Capio. He always is a man for the early part of the year, then he seems to gently fall away as the season warms up. Bowman's on the front, and it's the former Belgian world champion, or rather former Belgian national champion, trying to bring back another Belgian former champion in Johan Capio.
It's quite amazing to see just how well drilled Mappe GB are. This is why they've become one of the top teams in the world. A little word from Franco Ballerini there. You know, what do you think you're doing? We're trying to control this race. You're not going anywhere.
I must say, I've never seen Franco Ballerini do so much talking in a race.
Well, Johan Capio thinks it's quite amusing, but I don't think Ballerini was seeing the funny side of that little piece of operation there. So it seems to me now as if the Mappe team are starting to lose it a little bit. We had 6 riders at the front before, keeping control of the pace. Now it's dropped down to 3. Bart Lazen on the front, Ballerini in 2nd position, and the indefatigable Carlo Bowman's lying in 3rd.
Well, at this time of the year, of course, not even the riders themselves know exactly how their form is and just how long their body will stand up to this sort of pacemaking. They're far less consistent at this time of the year, and as we get nearer the finish, the other teams are starting to bring their men further up. Initially, they're happy enough to let Mappe make the pace because they're not wasting energy, they're taking shelter, but now much more urgency as TVM, particularly left and right of the road, have put men up here. And you see how the peloton, Paul, is much tighter now.
It's starting to get nervous now because they realise the cobbles are very close at hand. Everybody wants to get up to these section of cobbles because, let's not forget, they're only wide enough really for 3 riders. 1 man to ride on the crown and then 2 riders to ride down the side gutter there. 2.8 kilometres before we get to the Koningsstraat, which is why this urgency is starting to come now. The indication they're showing it's 20 kilometres to go to the finish and 2 kilometres to the Koningsstraat.
20 kilometres or 12 miles to the line, and this very much anybody's race now. They're all still here, all the men that matter. Johan Capio, former winner, he's here. Tom Steels is here. Hendrik Redant, 2nd last year, he's here. Schmil, 3rd in 95, he is here. Ballerini is here, the winner in 95. And this could be a very, very interesting finish indeed. Inside 20 to go. And riders are trying to reposition themselves. You can see the movement in the bunch here. Far side, looks like a casino rider coming up on the outside.
Very quickly now they'll be on that section of cobblestones. Moving up into about 6th position was Andre Schmil, one of the best riders in the world when it comes to there. Here is the Koningsstraat now. 600 metres of cobblestones, and the man leading them onto it, Franco Ballerini.
Who else? The man who loves the Belgian roads. Ballerini almost licking his lips with joy here. He is really putting some pressure onto those pedals now. Ballerini stretching the race out into a long, thin line.
In fact, he's forcing a little group away here, Phil, because he's sticking himself right on the back of the motorbike camera there, and he's using a little bit of slipstream there, stuck onto his wheel. It looks to me as if he has one of his teammates, Johan Capio, the TVM rider, moving up there into third. Andre Schmeel in sixth place, but this 600-metre section of cobblestones has actually exploded that group.
Well, there's one rider left in no man's land, but there you can see we've got a nice little breakaway going now. This might be the place to make the move. It's where we would have expected to have seen Johan Museeuw and Tom Steels. But you know, at this time of the year, the hills of Flanders may have hurt those legs and taken a little bit of the fire out of them for the last few kilometres today. Anyway, Ballerini, with a little bit of help from the Belgian television motorcycle, I have to say, has opened himself a gap here.
Well, Tom Steels, in fact, has moved into that group. That is Capio. This is Joe Planckaert. Andre Schmeel. Well, that is a very serious move indeed. Just getting onto the back there, Peter van Petegem, and one of the other TVM riders, which I think was Tristan Hoffman, the Dutch rider. So that section of cobbles, the Koningsstraat there, has seriously opened up a major gap with the top teams present. So this could be the deciding factor, I think, Phil, of the race so far. It's not going to go down to the sprint.
Well, there's the way to make the move, if you've got the strength, is to just go as fast as you can on the last real obstacle of the day. It was Henk Vogel's trying to get a reaction going there.
Stuart O'Grady moving up to just close the gap down. This is a typical move here to try and prevent riders jumping across the gap. O'Grady letting his teammate go clear and then just slowing down himself, but they don't want to let that group go so far clear at the moment because we're now well within 15 kilometres to go. So it looks to me as if we're going to have to get an organised chase straight away. O'Grady going through the middle there. Surely he will try and leap across the gap. Nobody wants to go with him. O'Grady now has got a little bit of a lead himself, but those 7 riders in the front, Phil, really are opening up a gap.
Well, you saw there Vogel's attack. O'Grady wait till somebody carried him to Vogel's, and then the teammate of Vogel's put in his attack. There's the 2 TVM riders here in the breakaway, Hoffman and Van Petegem. Here's the lineup now. In fact, it's not Hoffman, Paul, it's Capio, Van Petegem, Redant. Redant is here as well. Schmeel, Planckaert, Ballerini and Steels. Well, Hendrik Redant is one of the nice guys in world cycling, and this is his goodbye half season, in fact, because he intends to retire around about April-May time.
Well, he was so very close to winning this event last year, in fact, and he was trying to come up through the inside in the sprint there, and he was just beaten on the line by, in fact, Tom Steels, and it is Redant in that group. So what a great move by Hendrik Redant, as you said, riding his last half a season for TVM before he goes over to a management position, and this is very similar to the situation we had last year. Tom Steels is in the breakaway, Hendrik Redant is in the breakaway, and Joe Planckaert, Schmeel as well. This is a superb move, and I wouldn't have thought that these sprinters would have waited to go clear some 15 kilometres from the end. I thought they would have waited a little bit longer than that and tried for the big mass finish.
Well, Ballerini decided to go for it, and they must have told Steels, or it was part of the plan, because Steels was waiting for the move to come and has gone into the breakaway and could well repeat his victory here. 22 seconds now, the gap. And we're calling the leaders the group of Tom Steels, which isn't surprising. He was last year's winner. Schmeel is there. There's Ballerini.
Hendrik Redant, real strong rider, a great character, always happy to race in the English-speaking parts of the world. Very often at the end of the season goes down to race in South Africa in the Boland Bank Tour. A great rider, great personality, and it will be a shame to see him retiring from the sport, but hopefully he'll stay involved in some form of management position. At the moment, I think Redant is putting the pressure on because he feels that his man, Johan Capio, is the one with the best chance. These riders now don't want that group to come back from behind. Van Petegem there, sitting very careful. You can see the urgency of the riders, Phil, all the time looking over their shoulders just to try and estimate what kind of gap they have over the main field, because at the moment, nobody really knows what's happening. They don't know how fast the main field could come back to them.
Well, the face on Hendrik Redant, he's really taking this very, very seriously now. But he's under pressure, that's for sure. There's the composition of that group again. Andre Schmeel, Tom Steels, Johan Capio, Franco Ballerini, Peter van Petegem, Hendrik Redant and Joe Planckaert.
showing there at rank 16. Schmiel is the top-ranked rider in the world in this leading group of riders. Joe Plancart wearing number 55, sitting very comfortably there indeed, but Schmiel looking very cool as well, sitting on the back of this group. But they must all be very worried, I'm sure, about the presence of Tom Steels, because Steels is a very rapid rider when it comes down to the sprint, whether it be in a large group or a small 7-man group like this.
Well, the Mapes are now taking a back seat here. They're not working quite so hard, even though they've got two very good riders up here. Ballerini, we thought, was tired earlier. Maybe he decided to go back to that main field and try again later, which is what's happened anyway. TVM, 3 riders in this breakaway, so they've placed very well indeed. Lotto have got 2, Mape have got 2.
It's going to make it strange for the tactical race towards the end, Phil, because we've got 3 teams here with 2 men apiece, so they'll be able to chase down any groups, and it may well be that there will be a split form, but the main field, you can see, is not very far behind. But there's no one team organising, riding there in 4th and 5th position. You can see 2 Lotto riders. They're trying to slow it down a little bit because their man Schmiel and Plancart are in the front. So if we can just go to the front of this main field, the GAN riders are there. Henk Vogels, we're looking at now, wearing 158. He's working. No Rabobank man in the group either, so they've got to try and nail it down very quickly, because very shortly they'll be seeing the banner telling them just 10 kilometres to go.
Well, the teams that have missed out are trying to put matters to rights here, and the GAN in particular having to bring their men up because they've got Moncassin in this group. Les Français de Jure haven't got anybody up here either.
The man here from Français de Jure, Flavio Vanzella, rode for the Motorola team last year and now switched across to the Français de Jure with Maximilian Chiandri.
And there's the Lotto team trying to appear as though they're racing hard, while at the same time they would like to slow back this chase. It's very hard to control a race at this stage of the game, of course, but there are some strong men in that breakaway as we pull back now and look up this long straight road. There's a turn coming up now to the left, and this is now looking like the winning move of the day. They've read it right on those cobblestones of Koningsstraat. This is the last section coming up.
Well, with it being 3 teams with 2 men apiece there, they're all going to work. This is the final section of cobblestones for these riders, and Ballerini coming to the front here. He's going to put as much pressure as he can on here to try and open the gap, stabilise it before we come down to the last few kilometres on the tarmac. 30 seconds, so it's starting to come down a little bit. But looking at the main field there, Phil, from the helicopter, it looked to me as if they were fanning across the road, and it could be that the gap will stretch on this section of cobbles, because when you get a man like Franco Ballerini on the front, putting all the pressure on, you really can fly over these cobblestones.
There's Capio riding for TVM, the sprinter. Behind him is Plancart, then comes Hendrik Redant, I think it is. No, it's Peter van Petegem just off to the right. And still this great bike rider from the Mape team, Franco Ballerini, such a strong man when he gets out front. Looks as though we've got one of Les Français de Jure trying to close down the gap here a little bit. It might be Mongain. It is Christophe Mongain.
Good move by the Frenchman trying to get across there, but it's always difficult at a stage like this when you've got a group of 6 or 7 riders trying to get across on your own. And I don't think Mongain is going to go very far at all. As we look at the main field here, they seem to be bouncing over the cobblestones, which indicates to me that they're not going as fast as the leading group of 7 riders. Mongain, I think, is going to end up getting caught in no man's land, and there you can just see in the white jersey is the world champion Johan Museeuw, so he's quite happy with the situation at the moment because he's got his man Tom Steels in the lead.
Well, it looks as though Museeuw is taking a back seat today. When he did appear earlier on, he was going to give it a real go. There's a nice view of the cobblestones for you through the legs of Christophe Mongain. Now, tomorrow is the other big Belgian classic race from Kuurne, Brussels and back to Kuurne. And of course, the majority of these riders will be out again. Now, some will maybe planning on a heavy weekend, others may be planning on winning tomorrow.
It's almost like a revenge Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne. It comes the day after. It's on almost the same roads, except there aren't quite as many climbs as there are in Het Volk, but they do take in, as always, the old Quaremont. As we had a look here at Mongain, stuck in the middle of no man's land, trying to come up to this leading group of 7 riders who now, I think, are starting to jockey a little bit for position here because they're thinking about the sprint and they're thinking about this man at the back here wearing number 7, Tom Steels.
There's Hendrik Redant. He's pulled off 1 or 2 big wins in his career. A record holder, I think it was Paris-Brussels a few years back. And what's happened there? It looks as though Plankert has, I thought he'd almost come to a standstill there. He's checked out quite clearly what's going on. And now he's got back into it. He's okay.
Very good plank, a very good sprinter himself when it comes down to the finish. Plankard, I think, just swinging off from the line there so he could go to the back and get a little bit of a break because these riders not far from the finish line now. They'll be well inside, something like 10 kilometers remaining, 28 seconds, so the gap is still coming down. It hasn't stretched out anymore, so the main field must be reacting behind, and it looks as if Montjean is being picked up by a group. This is a group of riders, I would think, caught in between the leaders of 7 and the main field behind.
Well, this is the chase group here that has picked up Christophe Mangin, because Jan Kursipuu is here now. That's him on the right. So this is the group that's come across from the field. They've got themselves together. Serious chase down is a possibility, but TVM are here yet again. That's Tristan Hoffmann who's come over. So this is now looking as though we may have a second group. That's Stefan Bart going through in the Casino team.
Well, you'll only have 2 riders in this group who will try and ride to make any impression on the leading group, because the TVM or the Lotto riders in that group will not contribute at all to the success of the break because they both have men in the leading group.
Redant just dangling a little bit here off the back of this group. We're heading up towards the outskirts of Lokeren now.
I think Redant just holding himself at the back of this group again a little bit, just 2 or 3 lengths off the back there. He'll be, I think, wondering about whether to launch an attack or wait down for the final sprint. TVM with 3 men in the group here. Johan Capio, normally one of the fastest men for TVM, but they may well try and launch an attack because the fastest man in the group is most certainly Tom Steels, and these riders have got to try and attack him if they want to win Het Volk this afternoon.
Well, a number of those riders already have done well in this race, and they're now out to try and do even better. Capio, Redant, Ballerini, Steels, Schmil, they've all had good results in Het Volk. Het Volk, by the way, is the name of the sponsoring newspaper, as now Redant starts an attack. Well, that may be why he dropped behind there, to check everybody out. It was an obvious move, but he's gone and chased out by Ballerini, I think it was, and that's left just that group there. No reaction will come from a number of riders in that group because they've got teammates there.
Well, there's only one team who can chase, and that's going to have to be Lotto. 2 riders from Lotto there, and they were the ones who will have to do it. Andre Schmil now, he's reacted, going down the left-hand side. Straight into his wheel is Van Pietegem, and on the back there is Johan Capio. What a great move, though, by Hendrik Redant. He knew that Tom Steels was the danger, but he's got with him one of Tom Steels' teammates, Branko Ballerini. Ballerini, I don't think, Phil, will work with this group at all, and it may well be, if Lotto can organise themselves, they can bring it back together with just 5 kilometres remaining.
Well, the move had to come from Lotto. There was no one else left to do it. Schmil realised it very quickly. And I think Hendrik Redant here, who started the attack now, is just gritting his teeth and holding on to Ballerini. As both riders try to hold off the group, there's the gap. It's not a lot, but it could be enough at this stage of the race. And Redant actually speaking here to Ballerini and taking a good look at his face. Both of these riders now 100% committed, and dangling at the back there and going off a little bit is Joe Plankert. The old form not quite ready yet, I don't think, Joe.
Ooh, that hurt the legs. I could feel that. The legs were burning there as the man at the front, Andre Schmil, was putting the pressure on to nail down those 2 riders, and Joe Plankart just could not stay on the wheel, and he got popped off in the wind. But the 3 men have come back together again now, so we've got a leading group of 6. They could slow down a little bit, and that would give Plankart the chance just to get back on this group.
Well, he needs to get back because we've got Jan Kursipuu riding now at around about 25 seconds behind this breakaway. They've all come back together again. The nice echelon they've got across the road there, with the wind coming from the right of the picture, or top right-hand corner, as each rider tries to keep out of the gust of the wind. The two TVM boys sitting in the back, planning their next move perhaps, because they've got the advantage of having 3 riders here. They've got Capio, who could probably handle things in the sprint, and Van Petegem is the other rider who I might expect to attack next.
Well, it's 3 men from TVM. They really are in the strong position. Lotto now down to 1 man because, you know, the speed that Ballerini is putting on at the front here, I have a feeling that we're not going to see Joe Plancart again. Ballerini now knows just a few more kilometres. He's got to prevent any more of those attacks. He's going to try and keep it together, and the only way he can do that is by riding quickly, and Redant is going to go again.
Well, a little word there at the back, and Redant immediately went again. Ballerini looked across. The reaction now, Lotto not wasting time this time to react, and it'll have to be Steels to go, I think, because Ballerini this time surely hasn't got the legs to do it again.
Well, Steels had to do the work all his own now because he is the sprinter. Ballerini, I think, is a spent force, and he was waiting for that attack to come. There, Peter Van Petegem has come up onto the back of these riders. Schmiel, always very attentive. Van Petegem now is going to go down the right-hand side. Can Steels do it again?
Well, Van Petegem, the 3rd member of the TVM team in this breakaway, of 4 kilometres to go, has launched the attack.
Well, now there's the time that Tom Steels needs Franco Ballerini, but I think he'd given everything now, and he's dropped a little bit off the back of this group. If he could come back, you can see there's no shadow of any other riders there. So now Schmiel has decided he's going to try and get across there. This is Redant going onto his wheel, and Tom Steels on his own now has got to try and work with these other riders if he's going to do anything at all to pull back Peter Van Petegem.
Well, Van Petegem is a Belgian rider, rides on the Dutch team, and he'll keep up the tradition of Belgian victories in this event, but I think he wasn't the rider that we would have picked. Now look at this now, the Lotto boys openly upset, but I really don't think they can expect Ballerini to do much more today because he has worked so hard. Van Petegem may have hit this exactly right.
Well, Peter Van Petegem is a former champion of Belgium. He's already got a stage victory under his belt this year in the Tour of Mallorca. The only chance now that Tom Steels can have is if Franco Ballerini can come back to that group, but he isn't here at the moment. We have 3 men chasing Peter Van Petegem. You can see he's in the distance. Andre Schmiel trying to get some encouragement from Tom Steels to get Steels to work. Sitting there in 3rd position is Hendrik Redant. He's not going to work at all because he will wait for these 2 riders, if possible, to pull back Van Petegem, and then he will launch another attack. But he's the man who started the tactical move for this team, TVM. A chance here just to see, Phil, how he went. He waited for the slowing down. They all came back together, and he went straight down the right-hand side. That was a perfectly timed move. He went down the most dangerous side of the road where they wouldn't have expected it.
Well, he lived very nearby on the course today at Brakel, and so the area around the Muur de Gerardsbergen is an area which he trains on. He knows it well, and he's obviously got good early season form. TVM may be a different team this year. They've got some good players on it, and now they put 3 in this breakaway. I suppose if they hadn't provided the winner, Case Preem, their manager, might have wanted to have known why, but even so, the Mappe team seem to have this race nicely under control till 4 kilometres to go, and now they've lost their grip of it. Coming up to the 3 kilometre to go banner, I think it is, and Van Petegem isn't that far ahead, but it might be far enough now.
It's only a question of 100 metres or so, and going over this railway bridge at this stage of the game, early on in the season, that railway bridge is certainly going to hurt the legs. Van Petegem looking very comfortable. He must have a lot of confidence, knowing in fact that his teammate Hendrik Redant is behind, and also Johan Capio can't be very far away either, so he's got 2 men to cover all of those moves. All he's got to do is just try and keep the pain in his legs, just try and keep his legs going over, and if he can resist the return of this group of 3 riders. And for the moment, we have no idea where Franco Ballerini and Johan Capio are.
Capio's totally disappeared once the attacks came. He was one that didn't attack in that lead group. And Redant now playing the role of the perfect policeman. He's sitting there and just watching now. And if they do bring back this man, I think we can expect Redant to go again.
Wouldn't that be a great victory for him in his last year as a professional cyclist? 2nd in Het Volk last year, when in fact there was a little bit of a deviation from the line as we come up to the final red kite, Phil. 1 kilometre to go. Redant must be sitting very comfortably there, thinking about the little switch that he got from Tom Steels last year in the sprint and thinking how he could have won it. But he's looking now and hoping that his own man, I'm sure, can stay clear.
Well, this is going to be a very, very rewarding victory for TVM over Mappe, especially as Mappe have done all of the race making today, and they've been outwitted and outthought by the team from Holland. Just over 5 hours they've been racing now. There's Tom Steels. They're seeing a repeat back-to-back victory going over the top of the hill there.
See the wind coming from the right-hand side there. It's picked up a little bit in the latter part of the afternoon. You can see the late evening sun casting a very long shadow on Peter van Petegem, but now he is in the streets of Lokeren, consistently looking over his shoulder because he realizes those three riders are going to be breathing down his neck very shortly indeed, and it's all up to Tom Steels and Andre Schmil. But I think with about 500 meters to go, Phil, the victory's going to go down to this young man from Belgium.
Well, this would have been a sprinter's delight, this finish, wide and straight, but instead one man has slipped away. A very aggressive race over the last 30 kilometres, and Peter van Petegem gets the biggest win of his career. And the TVN team really have given one over to Mapai today. They've done extremely well. Now, can they clean up second with Tom Steels? Yes, they can. And so this is how he did it. This is the way to finish any race, alone and in solitary splendour. Peter van Petegem has Hendrik Verdant to thank for his two attacks that laid the foundation for this man to go clear and get the best win of his professional life. So the result of Het Volk, a win for Peter van Petegem. His time for the day was 5 hours and 8 minutes. Second, Tom Steels, last year's winner. Third, Johan Capio, a teammate of Van Petegem. And fourth, Hendrik Redant, another member of the TVM squad. And fifth, the ever-consistent Andre Schmil. That was the result of the 200-kilometre race from Ghent to Lokeren. The 1997 season is now well and truly underway. And I wonder if Tom Steels will win Ghent-Wevelgem. We'll find out when we come back. For Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.